When I reviewed Crypt Custodian late last year, one of the most common pieces of feedback I got from it was that I ought to check out the other games by its creator, Kyle Thompson. Now, I'm a sucker for auteur indie projects, Metroidvanias, and a bit of bullet hell style shenanigans, so it seemed like a no-brainer. Well, as is evident from today's subject, that's precisely what I've done. You're listening to the almighty Backlog. I'm Ellie, and today's review is on Sheepo. Available for PC, PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series XS. This review is based on the PC version. Originally released in August of 2020, and developed and published by Kyle Thompson. It's a Metroidvania game, and How Long to Beat has an average playtime of about 4 hours. If there's something I've noticed about Metroidvanias over the years that I've been playing them, it's that there seems to be two main schools of thought regarding their design. Either they are more about platforming, where movement sections can often be like rapid-fire puzzles, requiring super quick reflexes or extensive periods of exploration, or they're more combat-focused. An example of the former might be, say, Ori and the Blind Forest or Haiku the Robot. The latter, on the other hand, includes Blasphemous and Hollow Knight. Obviously, there are crossovers between them, because these all belong to the same broad genre, but which angle a developer chooses to spotlight is something I find fascinating. It can also sometimes be the difference maker for me. While I love a platformer, I have to confess I've found the ones where a stronger combat focus more immediately exciting and suitable to my tastes. I don't have the fastest fingers, so I find I get far more easily frustrated by games that require more dexterous platforming, and if a game is particularly puzzle heavy, I can often get annoyed because if I'm repeatedly failing a section and not making progress thanks to some asinine movement challenge, I know that can turn into a very notably negative sentiment very quickly. I think this explains why I gelled with Crypt Custodian so much. It's definitely on the combat side of the genre, which I already prefer, but if you've been following the blog, you'll also have seen that I've been digging into shoot-em-ups a bit more, and as such I found a real joy from bullet hell style sequences in games, which Crypt Custodian has in spades. It's this latter aspect that I found friends bringing up in regards to Thompson's other games. It's apparently a bit of a calling card for them, in that there are bullet hell bits jammed into them. It's perhaps no coincidence then that Sheepo, my least favourite of the Thompson games, has both the fewest examples of these hectic bullet hell sequences I so enjoy, and the highest degree of puzzle platforming. In Sheepo, we play as the titular character, an alien described by the game's blurb as a, quote, sheep thing. We arrive on a new planet tasked with the collection of an egg of each of the planet's 6 species that remain, ostensibly for cataloguing and protection. None of the local species are that thrilled at the idea of giving up an egg though, so Sheepo needs to wander about and find a way of getting a hold of each one. The game begins fairly straightforwardly, funneling you to the first big exploration upgrade before opening up and letting you explore more freely. The way this is done is by using Sheepo's transformation powers. Sheepo can interact with much of the world they find themselves on, at first by dashing between specific points of glimmering light, but then this power expands once you start finding eggs. Each one corresponds to a species endemic to the planet and allows Sheepo to transform into that species. This is done contextually. You have to come across the requisite animal in the world in order to turn into them, and it's also done on a fairly brief timer so you can't abuse the transformations that you have access to. Each of them makes use of something that species is known for in context. Birds give Sheepo limited flight, or the worms let Sheepo bury through the ground. Because they're limited to specific points in the game world, it clearly allowed Thompson to focus on building quite tightly controlled exploration sequences, which you need to engage with both for progress and also to find the myriad collectible feathers scattered around the world. These are your currency, so you do need to go out of your way to find them, since you cannot get through the game without splashing a little bit of in-game cash. It's an interesting and perhaps even bold choice that Thompson decided to forego combat in the game almost entirely. Sheepo has absolutely zero offensive capabilities. All of the transformations are purely for exploratory purposes, and there's no enemies at all as you make your way around the world. This puts the focus in the game very squarely on the platforming, avoiding hazards and puzzling out the correct path through each region. I do appreciate that none of the game's platforming is particularly complex, difficult or punishing. There are hazards to avoid, but the game is quick to reset, and the vast majority of the sections are doable on the first try. I said the game is almost without combat, but there are moments when Sheepo is forced into a fight, and that's the bosses. The denizens of the planet aren't always happy to give up their eggs, so occasionally we're dragged into a showdown with a member of the species before we can get one. These are probably the bits of the game that stick out the most, and they seem to come up when folk online discuss Sheepo's difficulty. I concur that these definitely are the most challenging parts of the game, mainly because Sheepo can't take a hit. The boss fights are where Thompson's love of Danmaku get to shine through, as some of the attack patterns they throw out definitely feel very bullet hell-esque. Sheepo can't fight back, so the only way to harm the bosses is invariably waiting for them to fling out a homing attack and then tricking it into clonking them in the face. This repeats for several bosses. I think only one, maybe two, offer anything different. I think what I took from this, and indeed from much of Sheepo, is that it felt like the early stages of Thompson's style, which, it is. While it's a brief experience with a relatively small world for a Metroidvania, it's also very clearly brimming with ambition. Having said that, ambition doesn't always mean things are good. While I think it was a solid idea to focus more on the platforming, what that results in is a world that feels lacking in drive or impetus. You are expected to explore because that's what you do in a Metroidvania, not necessarily because there is a sense of challenge or a strong plot to carry you forward. It also means that the boss fights are more laborious than I would have liked, not least of all because the vast majority of them follow the same fundamental tactic. Still, it's a nice enough start for Thompson's games, even if it's not one I think I'd return to. The final score is 3 out of 7. Mediocre. A game that makes you go, well, it's alright. These are those games that might be worth playing if you can get it on the cheap. This has been Ellie on the Almighty Backlog. You can support this project by reading the review over on thealmightybacklog.wordpress.com, or by listening to the pod review hosted on RSS and YouTube. Please feel free to follow me over on Mastodon, Blue Sky and/or Backlogged by following the links on the blog. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can do so by donating via PayPal to thealmightybacklog@gmail.com, or by hitting the donate button on the website. Thank you for listening and have a lovely day.